When I was in my early 20s, I moved into a small, modest house on the fringes of the city with 3 other guys. None of us were really close before this. We had all gone to the same college and graduated around the same time. After college, we were all trying to find a place to live, and none of us could afford the city center, so naturally we pooled our rent and found a house far enough out to be affordable, but close enough to work. The house was small, nothing fancy, but it got the job done. Rent was decent since we split it 4 ways. At first, things went well enough. We all had our routines, work, outings, college friends still around, and weekend plans. Life was typical for recent grads trying to find their footing. But after about 9 months, 2 of the guys suddenly decided to move out. Not much explanation, just that they wanted something else, or maybe better. Suddenly, it was just me and Ryan left. Ryan and I had barely spoken before. He worked odd shifts, often came home late, and never really mixed much with the others. So it wasn't the easiest situation to be left in. Paying. Double rent between 2 people was the worst financial hit. But even worse was how things started to feel off. At first, I didn't think much of Ryan's distance, but then his absences from the house became longer and more frequent. I'd wake up and he'd already be gone, returning late at night, still quiet and withdrawn. He'd only work part-time in the morning hours, sometimes barely mentioning where he'd been afterward. I told myself maybe he was hanging out with friends or dealing with something personal. One night I stayed up later than usual, a habit that had become more common as the house grew quieter. Around 1 a.m., I saw headlights coming down the gravel driveway and heard the front door creak open. Trying to bridge the new gap forming between us, I opened my bedroom door to greet Ryan, but he didn't respond as expected. He rushed past me and froze just outside his room, his eyes wide and unblinking, a look I couldn't place. It felt like he was staring at something invisible, something terrifying. His body was rigid, almost frozen in place. "Hey, Ryan, just wanted to see how you're doing," I said quietly, trying to keep the awkwardness at bay. "I'm fine," he said softly. The silence that followed was thick and heavy, so I just nodded and stepped back inside. That moment stuck with me, lodged in my mind uncomfortably. What was wrong with him? Why was he so tense and strange all the time? In the days that followed, things got worse. I started noticing noises from his room late at night. Drawers, slamming open and shut in frantic bursts. Once or twice I thought I heard whispered voices, unintelligible murmurs that stopped abruptly the moment I got near. More than once, I caught him wandering the house at odd hours in a zombie-like state. His eyes restless, speaking barely a word, always hurrying back to his room. One night, after endlessly tossing and turning, I was startled by a knock on my bedroom door. Ryan was standing there, his expression worn and distant but holding a faint smile. He said he thought he'd dropped his wallet somewhere outside, and asked if I could find a flashlight to help him look. I was apprehensive, but saw it as an opportunity to reconnect, so I grabbed a flashlight and followed him outside. As we headed toward his car, I realized with growing unease that it was parked way down at the very end of the driveway, much farther than expected. Why park so far away from the house? The driveway gave way to thick woods, dark and strange, with a fog that seemed to swallow all sound. Ryan kept urging me deeper into the forest, insisting his wallet could be lost far beyond the gravel path. My chest tightened with panic. I stopped and said, "I'm turning back. It's too far, too strange." He didn't take the flashlight I handed him. The smile that met my eyes wasn't warm or grateful. It was cold and twisted with disappointment, even anger. That night I packed my things with trembling hands. The house no longer felt like home. It felt like a trap lined with shadows I couldn't see. Ryan never came back. No calls, no messages, nothing. Years later, I still wonder what haunted him, what darkness he walked toward that night in the woods, and whether it followed him or perhaps even followed me. The silence of that house hasn't let me go, and the memory of those restless eyes still haunts my nights. Brian and I had been living together for nearly 2 years in a small, modest house not far from our college campus. We weren't the best of friends, more like acquaintances, who shared space out of convenience, but things had been peaceful enough for us to decide to renew the lease for a second year. At first, the house just felt like a home. Quiet mornings, shared dinners, occasional talks about classes and plans for the future. But then something changed. It started subtly. A creak here, a shadow there. At around 3 a.m. on several nights, I found myself waking to the unmistakable sound of footsteps, slowly echoing through the hallway. Heavy, deliberate steps that didn't belong to Brian, who was usually fast asleep in his room. At first, I chalked it up to the house settling, or the pipes working themselves loose, but then doors began to creak open gently, even though no one was near them. Drafts of cold air brushed across my skin even on warm nights, chilling me when nothing should have. One night, I came home late from work. The street was silent, but as soon as I opened the door and stepped inside, an overwhelming feeling of dread settled over me. I caught out of the corner of my eye a tall, obscure figure sitting motionlessly in Brian's dark room. His eyes shone faintly with an unnatural red light, illuminating the dark corners like embers glowing in the dark. My heart hammered inside my chest as I froze on the spot. The figure's presence was suffocating, thick with menace and silent waiting. I didn't stay to investigate. I stumbled outside and called the police immediately. To my confusion and relief, the officers found no signs of an intruder. There was no forced entry, only a window left slightly open, cool to the touch despite the warmth of the summer air. Neighbors whispered of strange glowing lights in the yard and faint chanting sounds. Late at night, tales that sent a chill down my spine. The fact became clear, this wasn't just a break-in. It was something older, something bound to the house by rituals long forgotten. Something watching us from the shadows. Brian confessed one evening that he, too, had heard a voice calling his name when no one was home. It was a voice both inviting and threatening, a whisper drifting through empty hallways that gnawed at his sanity. Living under that roof, I was never truly alone. The watcher was always there, unseen, waiting patiently. I eventually moved out, but long after leaving, the echo of those heavy footsteps follows me. Sometimes, late at night, I swear I can hear the soft brush of unseen footsteps just behind me, and I know he's still watching, from the shadows. In 2023, I was looking for a roommate to share my apartment, and Craigslist was still the usual place to find one. That's where I found Emma, a 23-year-old college student who seemed perfect on paper. She was polite, quiet, and had a similar schedule to mine. From our phone conversations, she came across as friendly but reserved, and I thought we might get along well. She moved in, and for a few days things were surprisingly normal. We both had busy lives. She was juggling college and part-time work, and I was settling into a new job, so we barely saw each other. The apartment felt like home, quiet and peaceful. But little by little, strange things started happening. Late at night, I'd hear footsteps rushing down the hallway. Doors would suddenly slam shut without any breeze. Shadows flickered just beyond the edges of my vision. Whenever I looked, nothing was there. One night, things took a turn from unsettling to outright terrifying. I woke in the dead of night and noticed the door to my room was cracked open. A door I was sure I had locked before going to sleep. At first, panic set in, but curiosity made me glance toward the darkness. In the far corner of my room stood Emma. She was perfectly still, pale, and silent. The dim moonlight caught her figure, but her eyes glowed faintly, unnaturally, eyes that didn't belong to someone alive. Her face looked both familiar and hauntingly alien, a ghostly figure caught between this world and somewhere else. She didn't say a word. She just stood there staring right at me, as if trying to look through me to something beyond. My heart pounded. I froze, unsure whether to scream or run. After what felt like an eternity, she turned silently and glided out, slamming her bedroom door behind her. The next few nights were bad. Objects in the apartment moved without explanation. My phone recorded strange static and soft whispers when I tried to call friends. Sleep became impossible. I felt constantly watched, as though the apartment had shifted into a realm where the living and the dead bled into each other. Then suddenly Emma vanished. Like a shadow fading at dawn, she disappeared without a trace or warning. I contacted the police. They told me with a sigh that everything about her was fabricated. No records matched her name or details. Her phone was a prepaid burner that vanished as quickly as she did. After she left, the apartment felt hollow in her absence. Like a door had been left open between this world and another. They say you can't outrun ghosts. And ever since that night, I hear soft footsteps and whispers, shadows flickering at the corner of my eye. Emma wasn't just a roommate. She was a presence. A visitor not meant for this world. And maybe, just maybe, she's still here.